It's been over 1 year since the War for Cybertron trilogy left the station, lifting off with the Siege toy line. Initially conceived as yet another reboot of the Generation's megalith, Gravity turned into a revisiting of some of the more obscure elements of the Generation 1 continuity family, featuring comic-only characters, Twilight Year, well, I can't say favorites, female characters people have been clamoring for figures of regardless of quality, long-forgotten gimmicks, and even something that isn't from Generation 1 for once. Sure, it hasn't been the smoothest of rides. There were quite a few bumps in the track here and there. Looking down on the world of Siege below, I think overall, it was a good time. Luckily, even in its final days, we were still going full steam ahead. Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Siege Leader Class ASTROTRAIN. This figure came out in 2019 as part of Wave 3 of the Leader Assortment, and in 2020 as part of Wave 1 of the Leader Assortment in Siege's follow-up line, Transformers Earthrise. For the first time in over 30 years, ASTROTRAIN reaches American shores as a primarily purple steam locomotive that only barely resembles his original JNR Class D51 engine. This alternate mode is a pure slab of rich sculpted detail, all of which looks vaguely on topic. Don't expect too much technical knowledge from me. Pretty much everything I know about trains I learned when I was like 3. Along the body are these nicely painted silver pipes, and below them are 6 pairs of freely rolling wheels. There's no way these would be able to roll in unison like a steam engine should, but this is good enough. For some reason, the front wheels are way too narrow compared to the other wheels, meaning this train wouldn't fare too well on actual tracks. Ironically, the original Generation 1 figure had the opposite problem. The face section does look very nice though, with a nicely painted silver headlight and a stubby little funnel. Siege ASTROTRAIN features my favorite ASTROTRAIN design element, the space shuttle boosters at the back. They're a little flat, but they're 5mm compatible, which is perfect considering ASTROTRAIN comes with a coal tender that plugs into those boosters using 5mm pegs. The tender looks a little oversized, but it is also generally well detailed. I like how it's basically the opposite of ASTROTRAIN's color scheme. While ASTROTRAIN is primarily purple with gray accents, the tender is gray with purple accents. The path from train mode to shuttle mode boils down to turning ASTROTRAIN inside out. It's essentially a repeat of the original Generation 1 figure's conversion scheme, albeit with more than a fair share of improvements and refinements. I like how the rear set of train wheels swing around to clear up the silhouette of the shuttle wings, and the way the nose of the shuttle swings out is far superior to the original's rather tenuous method. To secure the tail fin into place, though, you'll have to unfasten the rear boosters and the arms from each other, which I feel is a little sloppy. Is it all worth it? Well, this is one dumpy space shuttle, that's for sure. While the train mode only had one small bit of it that wasn't quite in proportion with the rest, this shuttle mode is kind of all over the place. The nose is really stubby and round. I would have preferred it taper out a little more. As it is, it looks like some kind of children's toy or something stupid like that. The nose is immediately followed by a large cowl. While G1 accurate to some extent, it's pretty ugly. The front set of train wheels make a valiant attempt to hide themselves, but they're even more pronounced than the cowl. At least they have some red and yellow accents to break up this sea of dark gray. The rear of the shuttle is probably the most compromised. The wings are fine, I don't have any problems with them, but the fuselage is more gap-ridden and broken than Challenger. The coal car from train mode can unfurl into a carrying platform for the shuttle mode, though due to its molding, it doesn't fold flat. This is an issue on every copy of the mold, from what I gather, and is unchanged with the Earthrise release. It features molded tread details on the side and 2 ramps that are compatible with the airlock gimmick of the Earthrise modulator figures. The carrier has an alternate configuration where it becomes a sort of launch pad for the shuttle. It's a shame ASTROTRAIN doesn't come with 3 solid rocket boosters that could turn into giant cannons or what have you, but then we'd be seeing a Commander-class price tag. Going from either of ASTROTRAIN's vehicle modes to robot mode is more complex than going from vehicle mode to vehicle mode, I'd say. The legs are pretty straightforward, though the feet flip around and peg into the sides of the legs with a rather unorthodox connection, which is a trick I'd like to see used on other figures in the future. The torso features tons of hinged panels, which all fold up and coalesce to form a solid body, and the arms have their own fair share of swivels and hinges. The backpack folds down on a double hinge assembly, and the thrusters follow suit. Not to say that the other two modes were bad, although the shuttle mode comes closer, but ASTROTRAIN's robot mode is my favorite. A first for North American ASTROTRAINs, the Siege and Earthrise figure dons the animation-accurate primary color of gray instead of white, and I feel this looks really good. Specifically, this deco is based on his appearance in the Generation 1 episode Triple Takeover, which is actually inaccurate to ASTROTRAIN's official character model, though I prefer the wings only having a purple trim instead of being solid purple. Another detail I like is the red accents on his midriff, which are based on the red stickers from the original figure. Like I said in my Siege Spinister review, turning stickers into painted and sculpted detail is probably my favorite form of G1 accuracy since it's so benign. ASTROTRAIN's head sculpt is also accurate to the cartoon, though mine seems to have a small blotch of gunmetal paint over his right eye. Moving down below the belt, I really like how the train wheel panels on his legs have the option to swivel backwards by a few degrees. They look rather dynamic in this configuration. Overall, I'd say this figure looks pretty good. I wonder why so many people had a problem with... Oh. There seems to be a growing frustration among fans about the fact that not a single leader-class figure in the line actually feels like it should be sold at the leader price point, and while Shockwave, Ultra Magnus, and Optimus Prime are able to use their accessories to form super modes, ASTROTRAIN doesn't, meaning he's either stuck being barely Voyager height, or just barely above Voyager height with the help of these platform shoes formed from the top of the tender, which for many just isn't enough. To make matters worse, the only way the instructions show to integrate the rest of the tender into the robot mode is this. Of course, this makes him a little back-heavy too. Of course, some shoes and a box aren't all he comes with. ASTROTRAIN has a fair share of handheld weaponry as well. First are a pair of JF-50 ionic displacer blasters, which are some serviceable handheld rifles. Next is the W-15 destabilizer cannon, which appears to be some kind of undersized minigun. A mini-minigun, if you will. The JF-30 Astro Blaster is apparently an homage to G1 ASTROTRAIN's rifle, though I feel the resemblance is coincidental at best. Finally, the W-40 Turbo Core Derailer is some kind of missile launcher, which looks best planted on one of ASTROTRAIN's forearms. In typical Siege fashion, all 5 weapons can combine to form the Omni-Force Orbital Cannon, which makes that rocket launcher Earthrise Cliffjumper came with look just as small as he is. Despite ASTROTRAIN's short stature, he is packed with a lot of joints, so let's jump right in. Starting at the head, he has a ball joint that allows his head to rotate 360 degrees unimpeded, though it can be a little hard to grip considering it is very smooth and it is blocked by these 2 shoulder pylons. He can look up a little bit and down a little bit. He can tilt just a little bit, but not very much. It's mostly just for side-to-side range. His wings can move backwards on a hinge by about 1 detent if you want to have some flair to his overall look, or to just give his arms some extra mobility. Speaking of which, they do go all the way outwards, which is less than 180 degrees, but they are on panels which allow them to dislocate from his actual shoulder mass. These panels do not clip in whatsoever and can be knocked out of place pretty easily, but they can be put back just as easily. It can be a little annoying, but I've learned to live with it. The arms rotate 360 degrees forward and backward, though they do bump into these wings on the backstroke. The bicep swivels 360 degrees, and it's rather tight. The elbows are double jointed, which means they have about a 180 degree curl, and the wrist has nothing except for this transformation joint that lets them bend downwards. This could actually be useful for some kind of sword-wielding pose, but overall would be less functional than a typical wrist swivel. The waist swivels 360 degrees and doesn't even bang into these wings, and that really astounded me when I first got this figure, considering that I thought that something would bang into something else back here, but no, it's really clean. The front skirts can move forward to allow for the legs to move forward, and they can move a little bit backwards, but they do bang into the butt mass and the wings. The legs also move outwards in a 90-degree arc, and the thighs swivel 360 degrees. Like the biceps, they're kind of tight, so do be careful. The knees bend about 90 degrees, but the calves are extremely huge. The calves and the shins, the lower legs, they're very, very big compared to the thighs. So when you bend the knees, it doesn't really look like you're accomplishing much because the foot gets barely lifted off the ground, even when the leg is at its highest point. Speaking of the feet, they do have an ankle pivot. It has nowhere near the greatest amount of range in the Siege toy line, but it is a very, very good ankle pivot and allows for some nice dynamic stances. So, ASTROTRAIN is an extremely poseable figure, and he can do so much that you want him to do, though he does have his limitations that you should be mindful of. It should be noted that this figure came at no personal cost to myself. I got ASTROTRAIN as a Christmas present, and as such my opinion of him is kind of skewed. That being said, I feel ASTROTRAIN is a very good figure and showcases some of the most complex engineering out of the entire Siege toy line. He's similar to every ASTROTRAIN that came before him in some way, though in the end is different from all of them. The size issue is a real problem for many, and a very understandable one at that. As good as he is, I don't think ASTROTRAIN is worth the full $50 price tag, though if you find him for a price anywhere below that, I wholeheartedly recommend him as one of the best figures Siege has to offer, and quite possibly the best bookend it could have received. If he were just a bit bigger, I'd give ASTROTRAIN the rank of Galactic, but as things are, I have no qualms about bestowing upon him the rank of Astounding. If you liked this video or otherwise found it helpful or informative, then please subscribe for more reviews like this in the future, and feel free to suggest topics for future reviews. When we return, we'll be taking a look at a Cybertron Deluxe who, at the time, was touted as one of the best repaints of all time. This has been Katastrophe. Transform and roll out.